Hello, it's Moira here, and in this tutorial we're going to look at how to work an invisible join without cutting the yarn. When working with flat circles, especially when you're only working into the back loop only as I've done here, you want your circles to join up, to be concentric. You don't want them to be a spiral. So let's look and see how we can join that last stitch there to the first stitch. I've marked the first stitch with a yellow yarn. I've got 3 double crochets to work before I'm ready to do my join. The very last stitch in this round you've already worked into it, as this was the stitch that you joined the yarn from the previous round in. So I'm going to pull the yarn out from that last stitch, so I've got a long loop, and what I want to do now is actually insert my hook into the first stitch, but I'm coming in from behind. So even though I was working in the back loop only, I'm going to be using both loops this time. So I've inserted my hook from behind through both loops, and now I'm going to put the loop from the last stitch onto my hook too. I'm now going to take that loop from the last stitch and pull it through the loops from the first stitch, like a slip stitch. So that was step 1. Now we're ready to move on to step 2 in our invisible join. We're now going to insert our hook into the back loop of the last stitch of the round we've just worked. We're then picking up that loop from the stitch that we created by pulling our yarn underneath the first stitch. So wrap the yarn and pull through those 2 stitches that are on your hook. We're now ready to insert our hook into the next stitch along, which is the first stitch in this round, and we're going to carry on working our double crochets into the back loop only. We don't need to work a chain to get any height, because by pulling the yarn through those 2 stitches created enough height for us. When working with yarn that's the same colour in each round, I will put a stitch marker into the first stitch. I'll have another look at how to create this invisible join when I get to the end of this round. I'm now at the last stitch, so I'm ready to join that last stitch to the first stitch with our invisible join. So pull the loop a little bit longer on our stitch that we've just worked, our last stitch. We're going in from the back of that very first stitch through both loops. I tend to turn my work at this point because I find it easier to work the way I'm facing. There's the loop of the last stitch, put that on your hook and pull it tight, and then pull that stitch through that very first stitch. That's step 1, remember. So the second step of invisible join is insert our hook through the back loop of the very last stitch of the previous round, and pull your yarn tight, and then pull your yarn through both loops that were on your hook. And that's how you do an invisible join without cutting the yarn into a double crochet, the back loop only. And you can see that you really don't see much at the back. I can actually feel it because it's slightly raised a little bit more at the back, but it still looks neat. This is the last join in this colour. I'm now ready to actually join a different colour because my next round is my colour B yarn. So when you want to add another colour, you work through your step 1 as normal, and you work through step 2 until the 2 loops are on your hook. Our new colour is added in at the stage when we would wrap our yarn around the hook and pull through. So there's my new colour, my mustard. I'm laying the yarn on my hook and pulling it through the 2 stitches, and that's my new colour attached. I will actually weave that yarn in at the end, but I don't have anything else to do. I'm now ready to work the next stitch, which is the first stitch in this round, and it's just my double crochet back loop only, the way we'd normally do it. I am tugging the 8 yarns just to make them a little bit tighter now. So I've now come back to the beginning of my round, and I've just done step 1 of the invisible join. I'm just untangling the yarns at the moment. So I'm now ready to do step 2. So I'm going to identify where my last stitch was, go through the back loop, then pop that loop onto your hook, and we're now ready to pick up our new colour of yarn. So we're going to join it by wrapping your yarn and pulling it through our 2 stitches. My next stitch is going to be a drop treble, so I'm working a chain stitch to get a little bit of height before I do my drop treble. I'm now identifying where my hook's going to go for my drop treble. So it's the next stitch and it's 2 rows down. So there we go. First drop treble done. I've actually got quite a few drop trebles to work. I'm going to continue working my way round, and when I get to the end, I'll demonstrate how we join our last stitch to our first stitch in drop trebles. So I'm more or less back at the beginning. I've got 2 stitches to do. You can see we've had a lot of drop trebles in this round. I've still got 2 drop trebles to do, so I'm going to work this second last drop treble, and then we're going to have a look at how we deal with the very last drop treble. When you look closely at where you need to insert your hook for the drop treble, you'll see that you actually have got 2 stitches that you could use. One is the stitch that we would normally use, and one is the stitch that was created when we went through that first stitch when we pulled our yarn through. So how I deal with that extra little loop is I actually go through both of them, just like you normally do when you're actually decreasing. So just pick up both loops and then work your treble as usual. If you don't pick up both loops, you may find a little line of the other colour shining through between your drop trebles. So we're ready to do step 1 of our invisible join. Just be careful that it's the first stitch that you use, not the chain stitch, when you're picking up that first stitch. So we're going in from the back, remember, and picking up both loops, putting the last stitch in our hook and pulling the last stitch through that first stitch as we usually do, and that's step 1 complete. Identify where the last stitch is that you worked and insert your hook into the back loop, and then put the loop of the stitch that we've just created onto your hook too, and we're now ready to change the colour of our yarn. Wrap your new coloured yarn round and pull through the 2 stitches. My next stitch is a double crochet, so I'm just going to carry on working double crochet into the back loop with my new colour. Looking at my project, there's no joins to be seen. They're all invisible on both the double crochet and the treble crochet. My demonstration was using a flat circle, but you can equally do this as a tube. The actual way you work both joining, whether it's a double crochet or a treble crochet, is exactly the same in the tube method as well. I do hope you now feel confident about working an invisible join without cutting your yarn, and if you found this tutorial useful, please do subscribe to Daisy Knot's channel. Thank you.